Hello everyone and welcome back to the Spanish Sling, a podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the Spanish and Singaporean companies and encourage economic relations between them. Today we're going to look into the future and focus on a main concern that we have nowadays: waste management and recycling. This is why today we welcome to the Spanish Sling Raúl Amérigo, which is the Asia Pacific Regional Manager of CONTENUR, which designs, manufactures and commercializes waste management solutions. And that's why I wanted to focus on this first part of the interview: the waste management, the future and opportunities that it has. So to get a brief idea of what waste management is and what are the main concerns regarding waste management. So Raúl, what are the main concerns that you face nowadays with we face nowadays with waste management, and is it really different from Asia and Europe?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me
Thank
here,
you for coming here.
and for giving me this opportunity of discussing such interesting items.
Yeah, and such important.
Yeah, as waste management and recycling. I'm really passionate about these topics, and I work in this industry, so thank you very much. Coming to your questions, well, I would say the concerns are pretty much the same in Europe and in Asia. Not really different. But what is different is that they are at different stages of implementation. Well, Europe started earlier than Asia. Namely, the European Union was one of the main, or one of the first supranational blocs implementing measures and strict norms regarding waste management. And well, Asia started later on, mainly because of economic development issues. So right now, the countries in Europe are more or less similar in terms of norms, of targets. And in Asia, well, we have a wide array of countries. Some of them are doing very well, some of them are still lagging behind. For example, we have China, we have India, we have Indonesia, which are huge countries with huge populations, and of course it is much more difficult to implement proper and efficient waste management measures in these kind of countries than in smaller countries such as Singapore, for instance. Coming back to your questions about what the main concerns are, well, there are many. Unfortunately, there are many, but I'm going to focus in three. I'm going to mention just three, which in my opinion are probably the most important ones in the years to come. One is to increase the recyclability of products and materials, because unfortunately not all the products are easy to recycle. Some of them are actually very difficult, almost impossible to recycle, and some others can actually be recycled, but it is yet very expensive, and this makes it unsustainable. So this is a very big concern, no matter if in Asia or in Europe. This is common to all countries in the world. Second concern that I would like to mention is that most countries in the world, if not all of them, are trying to increase the recycling rates. For instance, I can give you two examples. The current target for the European Union countries is to be able to recycle as much as 60% of the domestic waste by the year 2030. So it's not that far.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, many countries are not going to be able to reach it, but we'll have to try. And in Singapore, the government has come up recently with the Singapore Green Plan 2030, and this mandates a 30% recycling ratio for the domestic waste. Yeah, it's a big difference, you can see, but it is all about increasing the rates. No country is looking to decrease them, of course. So this is also a common concern. And last but not least, another very important concern, and this is very new, is the correct implementation of new waste streams that really didn't exist about 10 or 20 years ago. And in this regard, I will mention two of them, the most important ones in my opinion. One is e-waste, which is electric and electronic devices, because 20 years ago, barely none of us used mobile phones, laptops, etc. But now we all use 2, 3, 4 devices, and they get discarded very quick, very
Yeah,
easily,
totally.
and they're full of very expensive components, very pollutant. So this is being a real challenge that it has not been addressed yet in almost any country in the world. And the other new waste stream that is coming up at us really fast is the textile stream, because textile is the same with the current culture of fast fashion, if you want to call it this way. Now we are all used to wear clothes for, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, and then we have to discard it. And this didn't happen.
More.
Yes, of course.
Yes, totally.
It's a cycle, and this is not good. Our parents or our grandparents, they didn't buy much clothes. Clothes were good for 10 years, 20 years, and then you pass them on to your siblings or to your children or whatever, and this unfortunately does not happen anymore. So this is a huge concern that still needs to be addressed.
Well, so Raúl, you have given us an important and really insightful overview of what is really happening nowadays. So we see that there's a really global concern, and each country, in a way, or each continent faces different stages. But we see that in Asia's really different stages that each country has reached in terms of waste management. And of course, the 3 main concerns that you have highlighted are wonderful. But so we have these concerns, of course. But what are the new initiatives that comes from maybe your companies like yourself and on other companies to face waste management in a more efficient way? Which are the new initiatives that have come?
It's a very good but very tough question.
Yeah, I guess.
Basically, for all of us that work in this industry, the new mantra is the circular economy. What do we mean with circular economy? Well, initially, the economy of products was linear. It looked like a line. We had products made out of raw materials. These products, we used them, and after we used them, the product was not good for use anymore, so it became waste. So we had a line, and this waste had and has to be disposed. So let's say it's a line. The circular economy vies for making this line a circle. So if we get the first and the last chain, the raw material and the waste, we actually make it match, okay? So it means instead of generating waste, we generate new raw materials to make products anew. So now the life cycle of the product does not look like a line, but it looks like a circle. This is why it's called circular economy. So this is the actual mantra. And what are these new initiatives that we can do in order to implement our circular economy? Well, they're not so new, actually. They look new, but they're not so new. Many of them consist in going back to the basics. A few years ago, we used to speak about the triple R. Maybe you have heard about the triple R, reduce, reuse, and recycle, right?
I knew that.
Okay, yes, that's very good. 1 point for you. So now this approach has become more comprehensive. And now we have 7 R's.
Wow, I don't know that.
Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about them. These 7 R's comprise the 3 original R's, but we have 4 new R's. Okay, and we need to take them into account. So the first R is rethink. What do I mean with rethink? Well, I basically mean rethink the products that we use. And at this point, I would like to introduce a very interesting concept, which is upcycling. Upcycling and eco-design, the 2 very interesting concepts I would like to bring up. We're speaking about rethink the products we use. Okay, so there is this concept called eco-design, which it is actually taking into account when we design a product, okay, thinking about when the product is going to end, when its useful life is going to end. By doing that, by taking that into account in the very moment we design it, we will avoid composite materials, which are very difficult to, if not impossible, to recycle. We avoid the glues. So we make the product more prone to be recycled. This is called eco-design, and I think it's very important, and I think all of us should keep in mind, individuals, companies, etc. The second R, the second new R, is refuse. What do we mean when we say refuse? Well, it means that sometimes we have to refuse. some things, okay? And with this I can give you an example. Probably we don't need to have 30 pairs of shoes.
Exactly.
Maybe we can live with 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know, depending on the people, but we don't need to have so many things. So this implies refusing a little bit. Not everything, of course, we'll need things to live, but we don't need so many. So this is the second R, refuse. The next R is one of the original ones, which is reduce. And again, I give you the example of the shoes. Okay, we cannot refuse having shoes at all. We need to have some shoes, like it or not, but we don't need to have so many. We can live with 5, 6, or 7 pairs and not 30. So this is the original R of reduce. And then we come to the fourth R, which is also one of the 3 originals, which is reuse. And this is very important because it means that we should run away of this current culture of use and dispose. We have to forget about that. We need to reuse things.
Yeah,
we need, people speak about the single-use plastics or the disposable items. This is very wrong. Products should never be made or manufactured just to be used once. This is wrong. We need to reuse the things. In regards to this, I could mention, for example, we need to bring up a culture of renting and sharing more and not owning so much. For example, I can give you a couple of examples. The car we drive, maybe we don't need to own it, maybe we can rent it. The bicycle we ride, probably we can share it with other people. If everyone here owns one bicycle, or maybe even more than one, well, you could imagine, you know. So it's more about renting, sharing, and not so much about owning.
Yes. So it seems like a new perspective, but it's actually going back to the beginning.
Yes, correct. That's why I told you they're not so new. I mean, they might seem new to us, especially to millennials or to very young people, but these things were very common back then when our parents were young or our grandparents.
Yeah.
So that's why I say they're new, but not so new in the end. And well, this brings us to the fifth R, which is new, is one of the new ones, which is repair. Which is also, I'm sure our grandparents and parents were very used to repairing clothes, for example. For example, we were used to see shirts with patches here or pants, but this is a rarity now. Now, if you have a cloth which is it has a problem or it's broken, you just dispose of it, and that's totally wrong. So we need to repair more. And this does not lie only on us individuals, it lies on companies. Companies are culprits for this. They need to be able to repair their items, not just, okay, I sell you a new one. You just get rid of that and I sell you a new one. So companies are even bigger culprits to this current culture, not so much us. We basically follow what the market offers us. So this is why going back to repair is very important. The sixth R is also new, and it is regift. Okay, basically regift. What does regift means? Okay, we don't want anything for whichever reason. Probably it's not good for us anymore. If we go back to the example of clothes, maybe we have put on weight and we can't wear it anymore, or we don't like it anymore. But there is no need to discard it. We can just give it to someone else. So we could say donate instead of regift, but as long as we want to make it another R. This is why we come up with regift. But you can say even give or donate. But there is no need to just throw things away. If they are okay, of course. If they are not okay, then we can repair them, hopefully. And then we come to the last R of them all, which is recycling, one of the original 3. If we have already tried to do all these things before and we have done it or we haven't because of whatever reason, then only if we have tried to do that, then we can recycle the products, which is good. Of course, recycling is good. But to finalize with this, I would like to speak about the other term the other concept, which is very interesting, which is upcycling that I introduced in the beginning. What is upcycling? It is actually one step farther from recycling. It is actually it is using again an item but giving it a new life. This is upcycling, and it's a very interesting concept. Probably we can speak about it later on, but I will give you an example, a very brief example, so this can be understood. For example, pneumatic tires, once they are worn down and used, they are being used to manufacture a pavement for the roads, or even children's playgrounds. So this is a very good example of upcycling.
Yeah.
So let's keep in mind these two interesting concepts: eco-design at the very beginning and upcycling at the very end.
Wow, such complete response. I'm so happy about that, and also to think about the new ways of the 7 R's that of course are so interesting, but also stop engaging in this culture that we are facing nowadays in this buy and sell and buy. But again, so we have to stop that and become handyman. That our great parents and our parents were handyman. They repair everything, they reuse it, and as a last resort, we can recycle, of course. So wow, that's an amazing response. So thank you very much for that and for being so meticulous in every reply. So we have talked about new initiatives, but are the problems regarding waste management, are they really the same? And what are so the main problems that we face nowadays with waste management are the same in Singapore, for example, as they are in Spain? Or each country and each culture have different ways of approaching them because they have different problems regarding that?
Well, as I said before, concerns are similar, but problems are not quite the same. They depend on different variables. But it ultimately depends on a matter of investment. Investment needs to be in place in order to have a proper waste management. And this investment may come from either governments, so it should be public investment, or private companies, or even a mixed solution, which is every day more and more common in many countries. But ultimately, waste management needs to be sustainable. If it is not sustainable, we can forget about having proper waste management ways. And when I say sustainable, I mean that it should be able to be paid for. There is no point in coming up with new technologies, with very fancy recycling plants, just to give one example, if they are too expensive and they cannot be paid for. So we have to make it sustainable. And coming back to the problems in Asia and in Europe, well, they're certainly different, and I can also focus on, I would say, 3 main different problems if we are to compare Spain and Singapore in this case. In Spain, as I said before, this whole thing started earlier because Spain joined the European Union in the 80s, and the European Union already had very strict norms and targets. So this is an advantage for Spain in this case and for the European nations. They started quite earlier. Singapore, started later on because it doesn't belong to any supranational bloc, at least not to anyone dictating norms and targets for waste management, because ASEAN is not doing this by any means. I hope it does in the future, but for the moment it does not. So this is an advantage for Spain. Having said this, well, the Singapore government is taking this matter very seriously, and we just need to read the Singapore Green Plan 2030 to see that some very strict norms and targets are being implemented, not just regarding waste management, but also to the broader environmental and sustainability industry or sector, if you want to call it like that. The second major difference is the climate, and this is very obvious. The climate in Singapore is quite tough for waste management at all the stages, but especially for the food waste and organic waste. Well, the really high humidity we have here, the heat is not good at any means by.
Why? I didn't know that.
Yes, I guess this has happened to you at home. If you don't bring out the waste every day or maximum every 2 days, it smells terrible and probably you have maggots all over it. In Spain we have a bit more of time, so this helps. This really helps, and this is a challenge for Singapore and for all countries in Southeast Asia, because the climate is similar, and it's really a challenge because. With this climate we have here, it is also easier to have cross-contamination of food waste on other waste streams. So this is a very important challenge here in Singapore. And last but not least, I would like to mention the space constraints that we have in Singapore, and not so much in Spain or other European countries. Space is at a premium here in Singapore, and this impacts waste management greatly. at all the stages. From waste collection, I have a lot of experience at it because my company CONTENUR, where we manufacture solutions for the waste collection, and actually some systems are more efficient than others. So for example, the side-loading waste collection is much more efficient than the usual system because it is faster, because it is safer. But the flip side is that it requires bigger containers. And here in Singapore, even though the public waste collectors are teaming up with the NEA in order to implement this system in as many places as possible, there are still some locations which are tricky because of the space constraints. So this is a very clear example. But not only for the waste collection, but also for the waste treatment and for the waste disposal. A very good example is here in Singapore. There is only one landfill, which is an island. It is a man-made island. It is the Semakau Island, south of Jurong Island. So as you can imagine, there is a space constraints there. The useful life of this landfill is not very far away. I think only 10 or 20 more years, depending on how much waste we generate, people living here in Singapore. So there is no surprise that the Singapore government is looking for different ways of waste treatment and trying to divert as much waste from the landfill as possible, because otherwise we cannot afford having islands of waste, literally speaking.
Wow, so a global concern, as you have mentioned, but also each country has specific problems that they have to tackle, and of course it's companies like you and also the government itself that they should really focus and pay attention on this problem and tackle it as efficient as possible. So we have talked about waste in all shapes and sizes, and you have mentioned new terms that we're not so familiar with, like upcycling, that we may come back in this question. So of course we have waste, and we're trying to recycle it, but can new technologies come up and use this waste, as you have mentioned in some examples, for example with the rubber and the car tires, to be used in different sectors?
Sure, of course, and as you very well say, we are coming back a little bit to the concept of upcycling. Yes, we have mentioned this example about used pneumatic rubber tires that are being now used to build up new road pavement or children's playgrounds, but we can mention some other examples. Another technology that has been used for the past few years is the PET bottles, which are basically the plastic bottles that we all see every day, water bottles or other drinks. They are being turned into textiles, namely sports textiles. So for example, now most football jerseys of the very well-known teams in the world, most of them are made out of PET bottles. So this is a very good example of upcycling. Another example could be the chemical recycling of other polymers, and the outcome of this chemical recycling using this technology called pyrolysis is some kind of industrial oils that have industrial uses. Although this technology is still very new, and some people say, or some voices claim, that it is very energy intensive, so it's very expensive, especially now with the prices of energy that we're having. So it's still very new, so there is still a verdict to be said. And I would also mention a very interesting example of this, which is happening right here in Singapore, which is the ash that comes out of the incineration of the waste. As I mentioned before, here in Singapore we only have one landfill, which is an island, so the government is trying to divert as much waste from that landfill as possible. So there are 3 state-of-the-art waste-to-energy plants here in Singapore, and in these plants, the waste is incinerated, and in the process, energy is generated that is basically converted into electricity. But there is another byproduct of that, which is ash. There is some ash generated. So what is the Singapore government doing with this ash? Well, they are mixing it with sand and other construction components, and they're using it to reclaim land from the sea.
Wow, so really interesting. I mean, they're kind of killing 2 birds.
Yes, that's correct. It is very ingenious. It's very ingenious, and now there are some areas in Singapore, like for instance, Marina Bay Sands or Tuas, which is land reclaimed from the sea, and part of that land used to be waste before. So it's very ingenious and very interesting, and a very good idea.
Wow. So we have looked into the present, of course, but of course recycling and all this waste management has a really huge impact in the future. So to conclude this first part of the interview, let's have a glimpse into the future. So do you think waste management will take a turn in the following years? How do you envision the future of the sector?
Well, it's a very good question. I really wish I knew the answer. But all that I can say is I really hope so. I really hope proper waste management procedures will be implemented in all countries in the world. But it's not going to be easy. It has not been easy, and it's not going to be easy. And right now, we are living through times with major slowdowns for the waste management sector. One of them, of course, has been the pandemic. The pandemic, it's been a slowdown for most industries and most sectors worldwide, but waste management is one of the hardest hit ones because we all see people every day wearing disposable face masks, ART test kits, gloves, everything disposable, everything made of plastic, and furthermore, all these gadgets cannot be recycled because they are supposedly contaminated by biohazard substances or organic substances. So the pandemic has been terrible news for the waste management. I would ask governments and people in general to think twice before using such a huge amount of disposable items every day on a daily basis. And the other major slowdown that is impacting this sector is the current inflation and energy crisis, because this is causing everything to be more expensive, and waste management is not an exception. And unfortunately, there is always this paradox with waste management, which is investment. And as I mentioned to you before, we need investment if we want proper waste management to be done. But investment is always short-handed, and this is by definition, and even more nowadays when everything is more expensive. So now many governments and even many people all over the world, they are having other priorities before waste management. But anyway, let's be optimistic and let's hope that the world is resilient and I'm fairly optimistic that we will keep on improving.
Yes, so let's hope that we tackle these problems as soon as possible, and of course that all the governments and all the companies and ourselves are really paying attention into making a better future for everyone, and to make a compromise in this topic that is so important, and engage in the 7 Rs and kind of disrupt the chain that we have been facing nowadays of buying and selling non-stop. So I hope you find this information that Raúl has provided so useful and so interesting as I have, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.